Hi, I wonder if this is an area that affects you. Have you ever taken a music exam and felt nervous going into the exam room and working through the exam? It might be the music exam, it might be a performance in a concert, a music festival, a competition or something. But in all the years of examining that I've done, I've found it's a common issue. In fact, it's hard to think that there's perhaps anybody who's come in who's not felt nervous. Maybe the occasional person has managed to do that, but I think most people naturally feel nervous. And some people feel more nervous than others. And in my experience, it's more of an issue for adults actually than it is for youngsters. Youngsters feel nervous, don't get me wrong, but for some reason, maybe are often in a better position to handle it, maybe just being in the run of school, college exams, all that kind of thing. So often it's a bigger issue for adults, but certainly it's an issue for everybody. So what can we do about it? And that's really what we're going to try and think about in the next few minutes. And you will have your own experience of this, so anything you want to put in a comment below will be great just to add to the discussion around the topic. I feel nervous when I perform, and I've been performing for many years. I feel nervous about other things as well. For example, I'm a little bit phobic about things medical. So if I go to a hospital appointment, I always feel nervous about it. It's silly really, because I can kind of reason it. I can think, well, this is doing me some good. Somebody's going to look after me. Somebody's going to help me. But I still feel nervous. I wonder what they're going to do to me, for example. Is it going to hurt? You know, all these sort of things. They get me into a little bit of a flap about it. And the symptoms that I experience in that environment, I recognise because they happen in the music performance environment as well. So let's start by thinking a little bit about those symptoms. Okay, so I wonder what your experience is, you know, when you're feeling nervous in a music exam or a performance environment or any other environment. What about this? Does your pulse start to go a bit faster? That happens when we feel nervous. Do you find that your breathing changes? For some people, it's just that you're breathing slightly faster than you normally are. For other people, it becomes a much bigger thing. And at its most extreme, you can start hyperventilating, feeling faint, you know, all those kind of things as well. But affecting pulse and breathing, do you ever have that experience of feeling that you've got a dry mouth or a dry throat? That can happen as well. Suddenly you think, oh, I need to drink some water, I'm feeling a bit dry. Or you try to speak and your throat feels a little bit kind of tight. That's a very common thing. Do you ever have this kind of experience when you start to shake, you know, hands start to tremble a bit? That's a ghastly one when you're trying to play, isn't it? You can't get your hands to be steady and then you kind of lose control of things. It can affect other parts of the body. You know, your knees start to be a little bit jellified. You know, lips, voice starts to tremble, you know, all these kind of things. So any kind of trembling, shaking experience. What about this? Some kind of sweat. Often it's in the hands actually, isn't it? Where suddenly you get this kind of sweaty hand thing and then your fingers and hands feel all kind of moist and they start to slip on keys and things. It's not a nice experience, you know, but it may be a general thing. Maybe you come out in a sort of facial sweat. Maybe it's a cold sweat, you know. These are all very common symptoms. Maybe it gets to this point as well where you start to feel sick. You really suddenly feel as if you've gone off your food, you just feel a little bit nauseous and it's not a very comfortable feeling at all. Butterflies in the stomach, you know, often associated with that kind of thing. There are other symptoms as well. And if you've experienced anything else that's not on this list, well, put it in a comment below, share it with us, or identify with these things that maybe happen to you in performance as well. So those are totally common experiences. So if any of those things happen to you, don't feel that that's something peculiar to you. It's a kind of universal experience, those kind of symptoms. So what's more important then, having recognized that, is, well, what can I do about it? Which, of course, is a slightly harder thing. Well, all the experts tell us what we have to do with any fears and vulnerabilities is to confront them. Step outside the comfort zone. You know, if I have a fear of heights, the best thing to do is to get climbing. That's going to help me to overcome it. So trying to step outside the comfort zone, take on those fears and vulnerabilities, is a very important kind of step that we need to make in life, isn't it, really? And the great thing is this, that anybody who turns up to a music exam or any other performance environment is confronting those fears and vulnerabilities, because at one level it's much easier to say to yourself, I'm not going to do it. Then I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to be nervous. I don't have to experience all this stuff. I just won't bother, and then I'll be all right. What tends to happen if we do that too much in life, of course, is that that comfort zone around us starts to shrink and we get capable of less and less as life goes on. So these are positive things to push ourselves to do it, even if we're experiencing some of this stuff. So confronting anything that's a negative in terms of these kind of fears, nerves and so on. By doing that, it actually transforms what we're able to do, and we become people of greater capacity than we were. And I think one way in which we can overcome this whole thing is by confronting this area, perfection. Actually, there isn't a perfect human being on the planet, so that's not a bad way of starting with this thing. But when it comes to musical performance, we have this notion, don't we, that we have to be perfect. I've got to go into the exam and I've got to give a note perfect performance. Now that's one hell of a pressure to put on yourself, actually, and it's one that's going to generate nerves like there's no tomorrow. So if we go in there thinking, well, I've got to give the note perfect performance, what happens if I get it wrong, make a mistake, all the rest of it? It'll be ruined. Well, actually, maybe it's okay alongside this to say this. It's okay to make mistakes. That may seem a funny thing to say at one level because, you know, what am I saying? It's okay to go in there and play all the notes wrong, nobody cares? I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's okay to make mistakes. And that gets us away from the pressure of perfection. I've sometimes heard performances that have been note perfect, but actually it's not communicated anything. It's just like watching paint dry. So well done, note perfect, but unimaginative, hasn't got style, hasn't got character, it's not doing anything in terms of communication. I've heard other performances that have had quite a few mistakes in them, be they wrong notes or something about the rhythm that's not quite right, or some attention to detail in dynamics, articulation or whatever. But the communication has been absolutely spellbinding. And those are the performances I love. They don't have to be perfect, but the performances that engage the soul and somebody has really got inside the music and they've communicated something wonderful. Those are the days that you live for, the performances like that. So, great if you can do both, but perfection, just think, it's okay to make mistakes. And some of the most convincing performances in the world do include mistakes. It's part of live performance, it's okay. And that is perhaps a clue to helping us thinking about how we can kind of redirect negatives, you know. We're all thinking about all these negatives, all the things that can go wrong. What could we do to just redirect those a little bit in a more positive direction? Okay, well, here's an obvious thing that I'll put up at this point. Practice. In my experience, there are clearly people who turn up to take a music exam or to play in a music competition or to perform who have just not done enough practice. They don't really know their way around the piece very well, or they stumble over the notes, or they've misunderstood rhythms, or they've kind of half got something but it's going at half speed, or it just feels apologetic because they don't have the confidence to get up and do this thing, or they've not thought about something important like the quality of sound they produce, or actually, is this in tune or is it not in tune? You know, have we managed to do something to shape a phrase that makes it expressive? Have we thought about the music? Where are the climactic points in the music? Where are the moments of repose? You know, all these things belong to practice, you know, and quality of practice is not just how many hours have I put in, it's what am I doing with those hours. So really thinking carefully about everything, doing detailed technical work, you know, so if you're a keyboard player of some kind, have you done enough work? Right hand on its own, left hand on its own, practicing hands together, just going from this chord to that chord. So we absolutely know all those moves from one chord to the next. Have we rehearsed big leaps? So we just know where we've got to go to get from here to there, you know? Or when we're under pressure, do we miss it? If we miss it while we're practicing, when we are under pressure, you can be sure you're going to miss it. So detailed practice on all those kind of mechanics, but detailed practice on what you're doing musically, expressively with it as well. And I'd say there's another aspect to this practice. There's the kind of quality of practice that you do individually, but then there's also practicing performing. Now, what do I mean by that? I think some people perform what they're doing for the very first time when they turn up to the music exam. That's scary. The first time you perform something is actually in the exam. That's a very scary place to be. So as well as practicing, can you practice performing ahead of the thing? Well, it may be that you haven't got access to a concert hall where you could go and give a recital and play your thing, but what's around you? Have you got family? Have you got friends? Have you got neighbours? Anybody you could just invite in for a handful of minutes, give them a drink, make an occasion of it of some kind, and tell them that you'd like to practice performing your programme. There are likely to be people who are a wonderful audience, who are going to be very forgiving, who may not actually know very much about music. They don't know if you're playing the right notes or not. All these kind of things. It kind of takes away, strips down some of those issues that cause people to be nervous when they get to this point. But it's a great opportunity to practice performing. And when you're practicing performing, you will feel nervous. Some of these things will start to happen and you'll have practice in dealing with them. You'll also discover what goes wrong when you're under a little bit of pressure. So if you come away from that thinking, oh, actually, do you know what? That bit doesn't normally go wrong, but it did today when I was just feeling a bit nervous playing to my friends from next door. Well, you can go back and have another look at it. So when you come back to your practice, you can make sure you've nailed that corner. So that whole area of practice and practicing performing is pretty critical. You know, be so good at this that you can do it, even if the nerves get to you and you end up sort of doing it on autopilot. Actually, things kick in, muscle memory, all these things that help you to keep going. Okay, what do we consume on the day of a performance? This may seem like a very funny question, but it's interesting how many people change their pattern of consumption. For example, drinking gallons of coffee or tea before the event. Is it likely to help? Actually, not particularly. It might bring on some of these things like a faster pulse and so on. Get the adrenaline pumping up because you're full of caffeine. A burst of sugar before you go in. Some people find that's a sort of, they think it's going to be a helpful thing. Maybe it is to some people. To many people, a sugar rush might actually just be another thing that boosts adrenaline and doesn't help the cause. So it's worth thinking about things like that. You know, do you want to eat something before you go to perform? It's probably a good idea because you're more likely to feel a little bit like this or feeling a little bit lightheaded or something if you haven't eaten. But do you want to eat a great huge meal before you go in? Probably not. So, you know, dietary advice on all this stuff is often things like, you know, low-fat meals or, you know, things like whole grain pasta, lentil soup, yogurt, all those kind of things. There might just be something light that would fill you sufficiently, that would just keep you focused, stop you feeling faint, all these kind of things, but not likely to cause you to feel sick because you've eaten something and then you start doing all this stuff. So that's on the area of consumption. Taking drugs, probably not a great idea. I'm not talking about drugs that are being prescribed by a doctor, but specifically on the day of the exam. I've known adults who've come into the exam room and they've told me that they've had a stiff drink before they've come in to steady their nerves. Is that going to help? Actually, probably not. And you may even, if you've had a few stiff drinks, be convinced that it's gone really well. In fact, it hasn't. So are those things useful? Well, it's worth thinking about, what do we consume on the day of the exam or the performance? Because sometimes we get involved in something there that may not help us. How do we kind of shift all this fear from self to something more positive? Well, this idea of shift of fear to enjoyment on the part of the audience. So what do I mean by that? Because in an exam, you may well only have an audience of one person or a small number of people. But if we can shift the sense of, oh my goodness, I'm really terrified about this and it's all going to go wrong and I'm going to be really embarrassed by this when it all goes wrong and when it be awful and all this stuff that we do, actually, instead of that, saying, these guys are looking forward to this. They're here because they're musicians, they love music, they love this music that I'm going to play, and they're really looking forward to hearing me perform it, and they want to enjoy it and all the rest of it. That turns this sort of self-focused thing into the other person, the other people, but as a positive of them enjoying what we're doing. And that then helps us a little bit to think about, you know, not focusing on the things that are going to go wrong, but focus on the things that are going to go well. So not what's going to go wrong, but what's going to go right. Because in my experience, these are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you say to yourself, this is bound to go wrong, it will. If you say to yourself, this is a wonderful piece of music and I love playing it and I just can't wait to perform it, well, that's a good self-fulfilling prophecy when that actually takes place, isn't it? So trying to make that switch terribly important. Some people find it helpful to do some kind of relaxation or some kind of meditation. This may be something that's already part of your life. You know, you may be into meditation or yoga or something, or you might have prayer as part of your spiritual life, for example. Well, that's good. You can employ those things to help you deal with this issue up here. Being relaxed, I think, is a terribly important thing. It's amazing, actually, how many people I've met over the years who turn up to the music exam, they fly through the door in a complete fluster and start on some tale about the bus was late or there was too much traffic and I didn't think I was going to get here in time and I couldn't find the street and then there was no space in the car park. All these things are absolute stressors, aren't they, that are going to make all this worse. So get there in plenty of time. You know, try not to have a congested day before the event if you can avoid that. It's not always practical, but if you can, you know. But when you get there, don't sit in the waiting room forever feeling nervous. Maybe leave it till a little bit later to go in. Go and have a walk. Stretch your legs. Relax. A little bit of physical movement actually really helps. And it plays into this area as well. Some people like to be a bit more physical. You know, they like to jump up and down a little bit or shake out the muscles. That's all helpful stuff if it works for you. But this idea of a bit of physical movement sometimes is quite a useful association with this. And as you're walking around, don't start down the path of what's going to go wrong. Start down the path of some of these things, the enjoyment of the audience. What are the things that are going to be positive about this? And then when you get into the exam room, connect with the audience. Don't try to blank out the examiner. That's one way that people handle it. But actually see the examiner as a friendly face. Often the examiner will smile, which is always nice, and give you some kind of warm greeting. That always helps to settle things a bit, doesn't it? But remember, the examiner's not there to sit there and pick holes in what you're doing. The examiner's there to find the positives. Often when the examiner starts writing something, people think, oh, what have I done wrong? They see it as a negative. Actually, the chances are the examiner is writing something really nice about what you're doing. So try to transform all these thoughts from here to there. So the funny thing about nerves as well is that the worst part of nerves is often just before you play. That's often been my experience in concerts and so on. It's in the wings just before you go on that you feel the worst stuff here. When you get on there and you get playing, you get started, sometimes things settle very nicely. And that's a good thing, to try and encourage that sort of sense of well-being that once I get out there and I get going, I'm going to be fine and get more settled. This may seem a funny one, but can be quite a therapeutic thing. Don't laugh through your performance, I don't mean that. But actually beforehand, when you're feeling all kind of stressed up about it, try to laugh about something. Just recall something that tickled you. And laughter can be a nice relaxation ahead of it, you know. Feel good about yourself, you know. You don't have to dress to the nines or anything, but feel comfortable. So kind of what we're wearing, I don't mean about having to wear concert dress or anything, but at least being comfortable, not feeling kind of too tied up with clothes that are too tight or restrictive, or things that are in the way of you playing, all this kind of thing. That's all going to help enormously. Some people have tried some or all of this stuff, it still doesn't work for them. And I've certainly taught people over the years who've gone to see a counsellor or a therapist, just somebody who's an expert in dealing with anxiety issues. And some people have told me they've done that, not found it helpful. Other people have told me they've done it, they found it really helpful. So that might be something for you. More radically, I know some people take beta blockers sometimes. I mean, it's probably not the kind of first course of action, but if it's something that helps you. And I know people who've just tried that once and it's just kind of helped put them in a good place forevermore. So it may be that that's something to consult a practitioner about. Obviously worth taking advice on that one before getting involved in it. But they're all ways of confronting these kind of fears and trying to overcome what we're doing with it. Well, again, how much of this has been your experience? What are the solutions that you found that work for you? Put them in a comment below. Certainly, turning nerves into something positive in terms of adrenaline is important. I remember when it first happened to me, I started my career giving performances that I wasn't happy with because things always went wrong. And it was deeply frustrating, and I really wanted to do it right, and nothing ever quite went as good as it could have been. I remember the performance that I gave where that corner was turned, and I performed a piece of music by Bach. I remember it well. I was well rehearsed in it. I knew exactly what I was doing. But when I started to play, I set off at a speed that was too fast. I hadn't intended to play it that fast, but this is something that happens when we're nervous. We set off at the wrong tempo, often playing faster or rushing a bit. And so I set off at this faster tempo, and I thought, well, now I've started, I've got to maintain it. Actually, by the time I got to the end of the piece, I thought, you know what? That gave it an extra edge of sparkle. It suddenly came to life in a way in which it hadn't before. That was the moment where, for me, those nerves that had ignited adrenaline turned into something positive. It lifted the performance rather than reduced its impact. So that's only going to come about by repetition, repetition, repetition. The more we have these performance opportunities, the better we'll get at turning that particular corner. And the final thought I'll leave you with is some advice that I received when I was a music student, saying to my teacher one day about this whole thing about nerves and feeling fed up about it all. And my teacher said to me, "The day you don't feel nervous is the day to quit." And I think that's probably true, because adrenaline can become a positive in performance that ultimately lifts the game when it matters. Before that, then the nerves get in the way, the adrenaline becomes a negative. But it's worth pursuing it to see if you can get to turn that particular corner. Well, I hope that's been helpful in identifying some of the things that happen in these environments, a few ideas about what we can do about it to turn that into a positive rather than a negative outcome. But I'm looking forward to hearing from you and to seeing what your reflections on this topic are.